All right, today's video is a little bit different. We're going to be reacting to Mike Winger, one of my favorite YouTube personalities, just a fantastic teacher of the Bible. But he did a video called 7 Lies Your Kids Will Believe Unless You Do Something with Elizabeth Urbanowicz. And it's an older video on his channel, but I think it's one of his best ones. And so if you're here looking for one of those reaction videos that slams the original video creator into the ground and talks about all the points where they're wrong, you're not going to get any of that in this video. This is a positive react video to I think one of the best interviews that I've seen, especially on this topic, called 7 Lies Your Kids Will Believe Unless You Do Something. And we're gonna just jump right in and talk about the first lie. And there's 7 of them in the original video. It's about 1 hour and 12 minutes long. Today's video is going to be significantly shorter, and we're only going to cover 4 of the lies. But I just wanted to highlight some of, I think, the best content for you, give some commentary on it as well, and just encourage you to go look into Mike Winger if you haven't yet, to watch this whole video in its entirety, the 7 Lies Your Kids Will Believe video, and then look at Elizabeth Urbanowicz as well. She has some fantastic resources for teaching worldview to younger children all the way up through older children. It's fantastic stuff, and I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into more of what she does. And so I just wanted to commend this video to you, and let's just jump right in with the very first lie.
Yes. So lie number 1, and what I would say is most foundational that we have to deal with our kids, is the lie that if I feel it, it must be true, or just this lie that truth is subjective. And as I started working with kids and really helping them start to think critically and start to think biblically, I was shocked to discover how deeply ingrained this lie is. And the more I have worked with parents and pastors and Christian educators, the more I've seen how shocked they are in not even understanding that our kids have just absorbed this lie from culture. When I first started creating resources for others, I started getting monthly and now weekly emails from others saying, oh my goodness, like I had no idea that here I am teaching my kids the truth. We talk about truth all the time, and they think that the truth isn't true for everyone. Because one of the activities that I give people to do is just, whether it's with their kids at home or at church or in Christian school, is just to ask them the question, is the truth true for everyone? Is the truth true for everyone? And then give the kids a sticky note and have them write down either yes or no, and then a justification for why. Is it true for everyone, or is it not? And why do you think that? And parents and pastors and teachers are always shocked that usually more than half the kids in their care say, no, the truth isn't true for everyone. It depends on who you are.
This is really interesting, that our culture, and our children especially, have been convinced that the truth doesn't apply to everyone. That's how you get the whole your truth thing, right? It's my truth. I'm living my truth. This is true for me. There was a recent documentary that's been going around, What is a Woman, by Matt Walsh. And regardless of what you think about Matt Walsh or the documentary or any of that, that's not the point. But the idea behind the documentary was to go and ask people the simple question, what is a woman? And see how difficult it was for certain people to answer. And a lot of people had trouble defining it because they kept coming back to, well, a woman is whoever feels like a woman, and that's their truth, and they should live their truth. And the obvious counter argument towards that is there is an objective reality of what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a child or an adult. There's an objective reality to those things that is the truth. And is that truth true for everyone? Or is it only true for some people who feel like it's true? And they're going to get into the feelings thing a little bit more in just a minute, but I wanted to play this video for you in the middle because this is one of the best illustrations I've ever seen about how there is an objective reality, and when we start moving around the standard of objectivity and make it more subjective reality of our standard of truth or what our fixed point of reference is for understanding the world, this is what it is. This is what happens. And so this is by Frank Peretti, one of my favorite authors, but also in this talk in particular, one of the best illustrations I've seen on this topic.
Well, okay, let's imagine. It won't be too hard. You just imagine that I'm in a big, humongous, this dark room. It's a featureless room. It doesn't even have corners in it. It has round walls, you know. And the whole point of that is I don't know where I am. And I'm feeling my way around in this room and trying to figure out, you know, the first thing anybody does when they get somewhere is they want to know where they are. I had to get a map to find out, is this the way to get to Vail? I finally found out where, but you know, and I'm groping around, trying to find my way around where I am. It's like, oh, what is this? It's a chair. Yes. Oh boy, yes. It has legs and it has braces and it has a back. It's a chair. Ah, good. Now I can sit here. At least I know where I am. I'm in the chair. Yeah. Oh, that's a good feeling. You know, now that I know I got this chair. That's a home base. Yeah, home base. I can navigate from this chair. I can just kind of, you know, just kind of send out some feelers there. Just kind of, I'm going to find out where it is. Just, yeah, well, there ain't nothing there. Yeah, anything back here. And I keep navigating. I get pretty good at it after a while. You know, I just kind of, well, I'm feeling pretty good. After a while, I really get daring. I get into the old dead reckoning, you know. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3. Works. Now I can tell where I am. Good. Now I always know where I am. Why are you people laughing? I'll tell you why you're laughing. It doesn't really have a lot to do with being a Christian, but it helps. You realize, just naturally, automatically, you realize that no fixed point of reference is going to do you any good unless it has two factors. Number one, it has to be separate from you. Number two, it can't move.
You can't be you and also the sole determiner of what reality means for you. There has to be something outside of you that you reference that stays constant, different, apart from you, that keeps you in line, or else you cease to exist. You don't understand who you are. You don't have a way to navigate through life. The other thing it needs is it can't move. It can't be changing all the time, or your fixed point of reference isn't fixed. It's not constant. It's not steady. It's not reliable. It's not trustworthy. And if you don't have a trustworthy point of reference that you can constantly go back to and check yourself on, am I living in reality? Then what's inevitable is you're going to descend further and further into mental ambiguity. You're going to descend further and further into disparate ways of living. You're going to become more socially unacceptable, or society as a whole is going to become unsustainable. So if your delusions become acceptable in society, then the society will cease to exist, because we just can't function when we don't adhere to the laws of reality. This world works a certain way. God designed it to work a certain way. And if you don't have a fixed point of reference that lets you know where you are in the world and how you're living in the world, and just whatever you dream up becomes your truth, becomes reality for you, you're living in a dream world, and it's all going to come crashing down on your head. And what we're teaching children to do from the very earliest of ages is to believe this lie, that truth is what you make it, and that some people have a different reality than other people.
Yes, and so usually the older the child is when we start to work with them on this, just the more deeply ingrained it is and the more reformative work that we have to do. Where if we can begin with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year olds about thinking about the concept of truth, we can be much more formational rather than reformational in our work. And a lot of times as Christians, it's tricky to cover this concept of truth because truth isn't necessarily outlined directly in scripture. It's just everywhere assumed, just because up, 150 years ago, no matter what worldview you adhered to, you thought that truth was true for everyone, that truth was objective, that there were absolute truths out there. Where now our culture just believes something so completely different. So a lot of times all we do is we have our kids memorize John 14:6. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. We're like, okay, there, we did it. We covered truth with kids. When we look at that passage, Jesus is talking about him being a true representation of who God is because he is God. He's showing his disciples who the Father is. But then when we stop and think about it and think like, okay, well, what is truth? How do I actually get my kids to understand that truth is objective? That what we need to do is we need to help them discern the difference between objective truths and subjective preferences.
So we're going to skip ahead to the next lie here, which is follow your heart. And they have some really good things about this. And we're going to talk a lot about media on this channel. And so I think this one's a really good lie that we need to be aware of because it is extremely pervasive in media.
Let's talk about lie number 2. This one is follow your heart. Explain, what is the thing that the kids are believing, and then how does this affect them, and then how do you work them out of that?
Yes. Well, most media that they're going to be consuming, whether it's here on YouTube or whether it's actually on a show that's being streamed somewhere, everything is going to tell them, follow your heart, be the true you, be the authentic you, just the phrase that we hear all the time, you do you, you do you. So our kids are constantly going to hear this lie that their heart is the most reliable guide for truth, meaning again, that morality is subjective, you will find the answer within. I was just last week, I was at Disney World with my whole family and, with my little nephews and niece, and everywhere there's I love it there. There's this magical music, but then all these lies are just coming. It's if you have a dream, just chase after it with all you have, or you have the power within you. And our kids just hear this all the time, even if they don't say those things out loud, they're absorbing this. But the reason I wanted to address this lie second, as opposed to first, is if we actually first cover the difference between objective truths or objective claims that are either true or false, and then subjective preferences, then our kids will be able to see through this lie because they're going to hear it everywhere, just you do you follow your heart. But I saw this really quickly with my students that I was teaching 3rd grade at the time, and I had taught them the difference between objective claims and subjective claims. And then we started looking at, okay, let's look at some different ways that people view the world. Let's look at different beliefs that people have about morality. And we looked at this idea of, follow your heart. And this one kid in my class, he raises his hand right away and he's like, excuse me, Mr. Branowitz, I'm super confused. And I was like, what are you confused about, Josh? And he was like, okay, so let's say my heart tells me that I need this new video game. And then my dad, his heart tells him I don't need that new video game. And I was like, oh, so are you saying that your heart is going to sometimes tell you something different than somebody else's heart? He's like, yeah, that's a subjective thing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then what's going to happen? And so we just had a great discussion, about how our hearts, are going to constantly be in conflict, that, you can't practically, nobody really lives this way.
The inconsistency of following your heart is astounding to me that no one ever thinks this through. Because if you believe my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth, and if you believe I'm going to follow my heart no matter where it leads me, and everyone believes that way. See, follow your heart is for special people, right? In the movie, the person who's supposed to follow their heart is the protagonist. The person who follows their heart is the one who's getting what they desire. And they're special in that story. But if everyone is following their heart, and no one is helping, and no one is assisting, and no one is joining the team and trying to get this one goal accomplished, The protagonist is not going to win in the end. Like, think about Lord of the Rings if everyone followed their heart. If everyone followed their heart in Lord of the Rings, that world would have ended much, much differently, and that story would have ended much, much differently. People would have been selfishly going off on their own way, but instead, we gravitate towards stories of sacrifice. We gravitate towards stories of joining together to accomplish a common goal. That's not following your heart. That's self-sacrifice. That's heroism. That's what that is. But we've been raising a generation of Disney kids who hear this message constantly. Your heart will tell you what you should do, and you should listen to it, and you should follow it. Whatever you feel is right is going to be right. But the problem with that is it's super inconsistent, because what my heart is saying and what your heart is saying are often two very different things, because we're selfish individuals. We want what we want. We want what's best for us. We're rarely ever thinking about other people, even though we should. And so I'm going to be following my heart to do what's best for me. You're going to be following your heart to do what's best for you. If you do that in a marriage, what happens is you get divorced. Mike Winger in this video actually says every divorce he's ever seen happened because two people were following their heart, were doing what they wanted to do. Because relationships only work if you're both sacrificing, if you're both other-focused instead of self-focused. But in America, and most of the Western world, but especially in America, we are so self-absorbed. We are so worried. It's almost like when my kids come up to me and one of them has gotten some form of treat, and everyone all of a sudden is indignant that they don't have that same treat. They're like, I need that. Hey, can I have one of those? And if you say no, for whatever reason, maybe an older child has a treat that they earned or whatever, and the younger child doesn't, they lose their minds because they are so selfish and so self-centered, and they want what's best for them, or what they think is best for them. And we are all that way.
It's the reversal of Proverbs 3, where it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart.
Mm-hmm.
This is trusting in your heart, and then you're sort of trusting the Lord with your heart, like as if my heart is going to even tell me what God wants and who God is. It's all going to come from my heart. Like all my purpose and commitments and decisions are going to flow from my heart, which is my desires. But the biblical bad news, it's good news when you realize it's true. It's like, oh, good, I'm glad I was warned. The heart is like a landmine of dangerous, places and things. And some of the desires are good, and some of the desires are bad. And I'm amazed, Elizabeth. I'm sure you are too. I'm sure anybody who's honest with themselves is amazed at how quickly and easily we can justify wicked behavior because we want to do it. It's like my imagination goes into overdrive to make it okay. I remember when I was a kid, this lame story, but my mom says, be home by the time the streetlights come on, right? That was the rule for this season of life. I was 23, so I had to be home. I was just a little kid, but when I was playing, I noticed the streetlights coming on, and I was trying to weigh in my head how much I wanted to not get in trouble versus how much I wanted to keep playing. And I noticed the streetlight directly in front of my house was not on. Now, I knew that was just broken, right? But I was like, technically, the streetlight in closest proximity to my own home is not on. And she said the streetlight's coming, so I'm gonna keep playing, right? And I got home so late, and then when and this was the real bad thing, right? Was I told my mom this? I was like, yeah, well, the streetlight in front of our house didn't turn on, and she was like, okay, and she just accepted it. I should have got a spanking. I thought definitely.
So the point that he's making, rightly so, and I think it's a great point, is that when we flip around trust in the Lord with all your heart to trust in your heart and serve the Lord, we really mess up. Like that is a very key reversal, and it's backwards and it's wrong. One of my favorite sayings is love God and do whatever you want, because if you love God the right way, you're going to want what he wants. And then whatever you want will be what he wants, and so you'll be doing what he wants you to do. But if you flip that around and say, do whatever you want and love God, now all of a sudden we're using God as kind of our own personal cheering squad to validate whatever choices we've already made, instead of going to God and saying, what do you want me to do? How would you have me handle this? What is the right way to approach this situation, going to his word, going to prayer, all of those things. And instead of doing that, we simply just do whatever we feel like, and we hope that God will approve, or worse, we justify whatever we do. I think Mike Winger rightly talks about in this video as well how easily we can justify our sin, how easily we can come up with reasons why God will be okay with this. And we're using God to justify our own desires rather than seeking God first, seeking his kingdom first, seeking his desires first, and letting that inform our desires.
How about we talk about lie number 3, which is that love is affirming everything I feel. And this, sometimes when you write these out, they sound ridiculous.
Yes.
Right? But that's because they are ridiculous, but nobody ever says it that way. The lie is absorbed. The lie is, you get the packaging of the lie. You never open it to think about what the thing is you're really believing. And that's what you're doing. You're saying, hey, let's open this and look at it. So what is this? Love is affirming everything I feel. What is that?
Yes, and you're right. It's never stated that way. It's just assumed. We hear these things in culture like love is love. Like if you loved me, you would do X, or if you loved me, you wouldn't do X. And this is really deceptive because we as Christians are called to be loving. We are called to love because God himself is love. And so our kids are receiving this message just like we are, that if we are loving, we will never make someone feel uncomfortable.
If we love someone, we'll never make them feel uncomfortable. This, I think, is one of the most dangerous twistings of the truth that our culture has pervaded on us, and especially on our kids. This idea that loving someone means simply silently tolerating whatever it is that they do. That isn't love, and that doesn't build healthy relationships, and it doesn't build better humans. It's not conducive to actually improving. Loving someone isn't necessarily seeking to change them, but loving someone is being willing to be honest with them about difficult things. But instead, we've made it to love someone means you just have to shut up and accept whatever it is that they want to do, no matter how destructive that is, or no matter how insane it might sound. Like if someone was going to jump out of a plane with no parachute and you said, no, you can't do that, I don't want to lose you. And they say, stop it, you're not loving me. It doesn't make a lot of sense in that context, right? But when it comes to lifestyle choices that God says are even more damaging to your soul than jumping out of a plane without a parachute would be to your body, suddenly all of a sudden it makes perfect sense to say to people, you're judging me and you're not loving me if you disagree or if you voice your disagreement. And that's something that's really dangerous for our kids to believe about themselves, and it's something that's really dangerous for them to grow up thinking that they can't confront other people on their sin lovingly. They'll have terrible marriages if that's true. They'll be terrible parents if that's true. I mean, imagine that from a parenting perspective. You can't ever tell your kid that they're doing something that's wrong, or you're not loving them. That's insane.
Let's talk about number 6. Lie number 6. This is a very interesting one. I'm interested to hear what you're going to say about it. You are the one you've been waiting for.
So actually, this line did not come from me. I lifted it out of the second Frozen movie. It's like the climax of the second Frozen movie when
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's okay. It's not worth your time. But Elsa's mom tells her basically, you are the one you've been waiting for. And so this lie isn't said many places in those words outside of Frozen 2, but it is told in so many different ways in our culture that, you are enough. Look within for the strength that you need. You can be anything that you want to be. You determine your destiny. Basically, you can rescue yourself, because it's this view that, okay, the problem is out there, like all of this guilt and shame and fear and brokenness that you feel, it's just this pressure from the outside. You have all that you need within. And I actually even see this a lot of times within the Christian community. Like I saw a Facebook post recently from someone that I knew, a mom of a former student, and she had posted how written on the bathroom wall in the Christian high school was this, it just said you are enough. And I mean, granted, of all the things people could be writing on the bathroom wall, that's really not that awful. So yay, yay for the win there. But she had just written, she was like, I love this, #truth. And then I was like, really, truth, you are enough. That's kind of the exact opposite of the gospel that, like that we are created in God's image. And so we have this value that no one can strip from us, but we are also irreversibly broken. Like we cannot rescue ourselves. Like the price was God himself, bearing our sin. And so this is a lie that we really want to make sure that we're covering with our kids, because from the biblical worldview, like, yes, we can wholeheartedly affirm, like, you are unique, you are special, not because of your gifting, not because of your looks, not because of the things that you do, but because you bear the image of the holy God. Like, you are incredibly valuable. But then we're going to depart from culture in that we're going to say, no, the problem, like, yes, there are problems out here that do affect us, but the primary brokenness is within.
This idea that I'm enough and that everything that I need is already inside of me is a gospel killer. That idea kills the gospel, because the gospel is that Jesus came to reconcile us back to God, meaning there's a problem, meaning there's something that needs to be solved. I can't solve it on my own. I needed a reconciler. I have something missing in me, right? I'm not enough. Without Jesus, I'm not enough. I don't have everything that I need inside of me. I needed Jesus outside of me, completely apart from me, without my input whatsoever, to die on a cross for my sin and be my substitute, so that by faith in Jesus, I could be reconciled back to God. That is the gospel. And what we're telling kids is that they are all they need, and they can rely on their own strength. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your strength, with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And what we're telling our kids is, trust in you with all your heart. Lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge you, and you will direct your paths. That is a massive difference. And it's one that will send them to hell if they believe it. This is dangerous stuff. These are dangerous lies. And they sound so good, don't they? We love hearing these types of things about ourselves. Oh, you're enough. You can make it. You're gonna be just fine. But what it does is it turns the focus to you and your strength, and this very popular phrase these days, your power, instead of focusing on Jesus and saying, no, I'm broken, I'm not enough, but because of Christ, through me, I can do anything. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4, right? Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, not because I'm enough, but because Christ is strengthening me. Christ is giving me that missing piece that I need in order to be able to do whatever God requires of me. That's the truth. It isn't what we make it. It isn't what we think it is. It isn't what we feel like it is. It isn't what we tell ourselves. It isn't whatever we have in our heart. And it isn't inside of us. It is in the Bible. It is God's word. It is Jesus. And that is why I love Mike Winger so much, and why I love Elizabeth Urbanowicz and what she does. And I really encourage you to go watch the whole video. I know this has been a long reaction video, but man, it's so good. I mean, we barely scratched the surface of some of the really great stuff in here. There's 3 other lies that they go over, and they go into quite a bit more detail on the lies that we've already covered. I really encourage you to go watch the whole thing in context. Check out more of Mike Winger's stuff on YouTube. You will be blessed and encouraged, and I really, really have been blessed by him and have grown a lot from listening to him, and so I really commend him to you as well. Until next time, this is Caleb, and love you guys.